thank CA Neeraj and his team for giving me the opportunity to present today or share my thoughts on the UAE SMEs, the challenges and opportunities. I'm not going to talk about challenges and opportunities in a traditional economic sense. I think what I'm going to talk about today are the challenges and opportunities of reviving a relationship that seems to have lost mutual trust and respect. Let me come to a different dimension of this. So what are we talking about here? Firstly, when we talk about SMEs, I'm talking about onshore and free zone companies in the UAE who have a top line of between 40 and 200 million dirhams. Now, this could be in trading, in retail, in F&B, manufacturing, whatever industries. And we size the size of this particular segment of about 212,000 entities across the UAE. Now, what I'm going to share with you in the next few slides are my opinion and not necessarily those of my employer. So please take note of that. Now, for a long time, the SMEs in the UAE were the darlings of the banking industry. And somewhere down the line, they became untouchables. Now, if you are an SME today, somehow the relationship between the bank and the SME is such that a bank does not want an SME on either side of their balance sheet, whether from a lending perspective or from a transactional banking liabilities perspective. Something seems to have gone wrong there. If you are a new SME in this country, it's so difficult even to open a transactional account for yourselves. The processes involved through the AML and KYC have become so typically difficult that one wonders what's going wrong with that. If you're one of those fortunate SMEs that have enough liquidity and they got cash, you earn next to nothing on your bank deposits. And if you're the bulk of the unfortunate SMEs that are looking for liquidity support and funding, forget about it. Now, this is today's unfortunate reality that we are living in. Now, I just want to spend a few minutes discussing what went wrong here. I mean, how did we end up in this space? There is no doubt that a lot of businesses, small businesses, have faced closure and failure, and people have skipped the country and all sorts of stuff. We have all been witness to that. Again, this has resulted in a fair bit of credit losses to banking and other financial institutions. I mean, these are facts nobody can deny. But I just want to spend a few minutes analyzing or at least exploring what really went wrong. How did we get into this situation of distrust between the banking fraternity or the financial institutions and the SME segment? I think in my assessment, one of the first reasons is the easy money availability. I mean, if you cast your mind to the pre-2014, 2015 era, if you are an SME, you can apply to 5 different banks on the same day and all 5 will give you credit, right? So it was that easy to get credit. Now, that kind of easy availability of credit led to excessive borrowings. And this is, I'm not saying this, but this is what we have all witnessed. Came along with it a certain lack of financial discipline on the part of these SMEs. Now, when I say lack of financial discipline. I really mean people buying, an office premises or an OD account. There's no way they're going to match their revenue generating capability to pay off that kind of a debt. It's not a blame game. I'm not saying this is only the SME to blame. Equally so, the lenders did not have proper monitoring of the ultimate use of funds. If somebody is asking for a facility and you grant them a facility, you need to control and see where this money is actually being used. And that didn't happen. Another key factor that contributed, in my opinion, to the distrust between the SME sector and the banking fraternity is a lack of tangible plan B. I'm not talking about the pandemic of the last 13, 15 months. I'm talking about the ability of an SME to plan ahead and build some buffers or a plan B, not necessarily in terms of liquidity alone, but also in terms of what do I do if the economy shrinks? What do I do if oil prices collapse by 40%, 50%? So there was really no real planning for a lot of these smaller businesses in terms of how do I attack an economic shock situation. The other item that I would also like to highlight is a very limited innovation. Now, what I mean by this, in the 90s and early 2000s, if you look at the number of SMEs that sprang up in this country particularly, most of them were new shops set up by people who had gained experience in a bigger organization. Doesn't matter which industry, maybe F&B, maybe retail. They learned the tricks of the trade, so to speak, in that industry, left that particular entity or the organization and started something on their own. So these were models that were being aped per se from other existing models. And these were not really path-breaking new models. And another key factor that contributed to the plight of the SMEs is what I call as static business models. Now, what do I mean by static business models? I mean, somebody started an SME in the 90s with a very small single location operation. Business was good, they grew. They became 5 branches, 8 branches, maybe diversified to other businesses. But the management model that they adopted was still a very, very controlled one-man show or one-family show. This wasn't really built for an adaptation to a growth or scalable model. That caused, again, some failures amongst SMEs. Coming back to the bank end of things, through the 2000s, I think the compliance functions in banks really took dominance. I mean, banks were previously led by the business functions, but somewhere down the line, the control entirely went into the hands of the compliance function. And so the scrutiny of entry of new players into the market, entry, opening a bank account, offering facilities, and scrutinizing their payments, everything became such a difficult task that entry barriers really became very difficult for SMEs to scale for having banking access. Another related factor was if you are a small SME and you have very small balances in your bank account, even if you don't borrow, the cost of servicing an account at banks became extremely high. And that is one of the reasons why you see that over a period of time, every bank in the country started increasing the size of the minimum balance that an SME requires to maintain in order to get serviced, or you end up with paying horrific charges for not maintaining minimum balances. Now, I'm not saying these are the only factors, but somewhere all these factors slowly building up ended up in a situation where the darlings somehow became untouchables, and this trust between the SME segment overall and the banking, and I'm not saying only banks, I'm talking about financial institutions like us, which are NBFIs too. We are equally to blame in this. So it led to a situation of distrust, and I'm addressing this at a more deeper level of fixing. How do we reset or revive this relationship into a more trusting and mutually respecting environment? This is a concern that I really share, and what I'm going to talk to you next is, as a lender, as a financial services provider, what can I do to bring back or to revive this trust between the two parties? Now, I'll just take this pointer out. Okay, at Finance House, we realized that you need to at least start taking some action to rebuild this trust. It's not about just lending money outright or throwing something at nothing. It is a much deeper divide that needed to be filled, and that was felt as one of the key strategic objectives of Finance House, that we need to rebuild this trust. And what we have done since the beginning of the year is to get into the act of somehow reviving trust with the SME segment. And in this connection, what we did is to launch what we call the Rabeh suite of business solutions aimed at SMEs. Now, let me just explain to you. We have a Rabeh deposit product, an Rabeh guarantee product, and Rabeh WPS. I'll just explain why we went into this and what do we aim to get out of this. I said in the earlier slide that if you are an SME and if you have money, you're liquid, you don't earn anything on it. So we said, okay, let's fix that segment or that particular concern by trying to put in a product that makes sense to the SMEs. Now, for instance, we offer fixed deposit tenors of between 30 days to 5 years under the Rabeh deposit. Now, it's not just a plain vanilla deposit, right? Now, if you, for example, place a deposit for 5 years, let's say 1 million dirham for 5 years, and you earn 4% per annum on it, your interest over the 5-year period is 200,000 dirhams. Now, we have gone the extra mile to offer you, saying that, okay, if you're an SME and if you have spare cash, you want to place it for 5 years, we are happy to give you the entire 200,000 dirham advance for 5 years. You can take it on day one. You place a deposit, you can take a 200,000 dirhams back as interest. Now, how's that for starters in terms of rebuilding trust? And not just that. So we're saying you could also, for example, be flexible. We are flexible in case of premature withdrawals. Let's say you place a deposit for 5 years and you have an emergency, you want money without breaking the deposit. You could actually take 25% of up to 25% of your deposit back. There will be no change in the interest rate that has been contracted. There will be no penalties, and you have the flexibility to take your money back. Now, it's not what I want to share is it's not about selling a product. We are trying to rebuild that trust by offering you something that is not the run-of-the-mill product that anybody can offer. So this is an effort coming out of a need to rebuild that trust. That's what I wanted to highlight. Similarly, if you talk about the Rabeh Flexi deposit, this is nothing but a current account or a call account, you may call it, because it's an interest-paying transactional account. Now, compared to what the banks have done, there is no minimum balance. You can open that account with zero balance, and we're not going to charge you any charges for for not maintaining a minimum balance. This is a demonstration of intent to rebuild that trust, right? Of course, the finance companies have a handicap in this country that we cannot issue you a checkbook. So we will be offering you a mobile app through which you can make transfers and receive payments and check your balances and everything. So that's going to be useful. And on top of that, on any balance that you maintain in this call account over 10,000 dirhams, the SME also earns interest at 1% per annum. So in today's interest rate environment, on a call account, I think it's very, very rare, not impossible, to see a return on balances as low as 10,000 or above. So it's not, again, I want to re-emphasize this. This is not an attempt purely to sell a product. This is an attempt to rebuild that trust so that we get back into the SME segment. The SMEs trust us as a financial institution, and we start moving forward together for bigger and better things. If today, if you went to a bank, typically, even if you place 100% cash margin and you want to issue a bid bond or a performance bond or a financial guarantee or whatever, I can tell you it takes anywhere between 4 to 7 business days to get your guarantees issued, despite it being 100% cash margin. And still, you will end up paying a commission to the bank despite it being 100% cash collateralized guarantee, and you literally get nothing on those cash margin balances. So here we said, okay, how do we demonstrate our support to the SME segment again? How do we rebuild the trust? Let's do this. We guarantee issuance of a guarantee, Rabeh guarantee, in 24 hours. There is no processing fees or commission. And on top of that, you earn a pretty decent interest on your margin balances. So much for building trust and putting your mouth where your money is, right? So similarly, the other product that we are trying to offer to the segment is to ease their pain is the WPS product, which is through a dedicated portal. And the fees are waived for the first 3 months on the WPS customers. Your employees, if they're blue-collar workers, they can get their payday cards through which they can withdraw cash and point of their usage. And there's a mobile app through which they can check balances, do remittances, etc. Now, I don't want you to look at these as pure sales pitch products. Partly they are, but I think the underlying concept here is to rebuild that trust, and that's what we want to do. And as a sales pitch, I would say if you are interested in these propositions, of course, do reach us at this SMS, and we'll be happy to provide you the service.